One of the criteria used to classify markets is what differentiates free markets, which are those where demanders and suppliers make their decisions without state interference, from intervened or regulated markets where the state establishes conditions that limit the decisions of demanders and suppliers. State intervention in the market can take different forms. Establishing taxes, setting production limits, setting price caps, among others, are different forms of intervention. In this video, we will analyze one of these modes of intervention when the state considers that the market price is not appropriate and decides to regulate it. When it adopts measures of this kind, the state aims to replace the market's activity in the allocation of goods and services, and it does so by establishing a policy of maximum and minimum prices. Let's now analyze the economic consequences of this type of regulation. To find the first attempt to limit prices, we must go back to the Code of Hammurabi in Mesopotamia. In the Roman Empire, scarcity of essential goods at certain times forced emperors to approve maximum prices to prevent social unrest. Specifically, during the reign of Emperor Diocletian, legislation was created to this effect. Since then, this system has been applied numerous times, primarily when there has been a need to prevent the prices of essential goods from becoming unaffordable and out of reach for the general public. If the state thinks a particular good should be available to everyone, one of the options is to establish a maximum price above which no business can sell, because if they did, they would be committing a crime. Consider, for example, the bread market in a certain country. If this is a staple food in the diet of its residents, and due to poor harvests, its price has shot up to 50 pesos per kilo, the government can decide to ensure its consumption in the basic basket that it is necessary to pay lower for it, for example 30. It sets this price as the ceiling and prohibits selling above it. At this price, 1 billion kilos would be demanded in the market, but producers would only be willing to provide 400 million kilos. This results in an excess demand of 600 million kilos. There isn't enough bread at that price to cover all the demand. Since the product is scarce, it will be rationed either spontaneously, causing long queues or waiting lists to get it, or planned, setting criteria such as age, economic level, etc. to get it. This context will lead to the development of illegal methods that allow for this good to be obtained outside of the market, but paying a price much higher than that set by authorities, the black market. Those acting in the black market divert part of the production to sell it at a price much higher than what is set by law. Another type of price control involves setting a minimum price. The regulation of minimum prices historically is much more recent and came about when society realized the need to protect certain groups that sell their product in the market. Examples of this regulation can be seen in certain agricultural markets when the state wanted to prevent farmers' income from drastically dropping when the abundance of crops crashed the prices, and in the labor market, when a minimum wage is set below which you cannot legally be hired. Let's consider the banana market in a certain country. If the price of bananas has fallen due to the exceptional harvests that took place during the season at 3 pesos per kilo, and the government does not want farmers who live off they suffer the consequences of selling their produce at such low prices in an area of the country with great social instability, can try to compensate for this situation by establishing a minimum price per kilogram of bananas. Actually, the minimum price set by the state in order to have economic effects must be set above that which would take place in the free market. If the government sets a minimum price of 4 pesos per kilo, as we can see in the graph, only 500 million kilos are demanded at that price. They offer many more, 200 million. As a result, there is an oversupply of bananas on the market amounting to 700 million kilos. Many of you may wonder, what's wrong with there being more production than is demanded? The reason this oversupply is harmful is because it creates economic inefficiency. Let's reason this answer. Remember that productive factors are scarce in relative terms. So, if these productive factors are used for the production of a good that society doesn't want, they won't be used in the production of other goods or services that society does demand. So the excess supply created by this type of regulation shows economic inefficiency. We've seen from a positive point of view, that is, by analyzing objectively, without introducing opinion about the consequences of this type of price regulation. Very well. The appropriateness or not of applying this type of regulation depends on the overall assessment of its effects on society. And in this, the criterion of the decision maker will obviously be decisive. Therefore, it would be misleading to deduce as an exact mathematical rule that price regulation is bad. The concept of good or bad is relative and depends on the analyst's criteria. What's irrefutable are the economic consequences of this type of measure, which we've just demonstrated.